Okay, bearing in mind that while they were trying all of these milk formulas, okay, which were all Nutricia products, I had been talking to one of the head nutritionists at Nutricia, okay, and when we had the meeting on the time that they uplifted her on the 30th of March, okay, I bring up the fact that the head nutritionist wrote me out an email to read out to him. So I read this out to him, and I turned around and says, now, don't you find it strange that here you are saying that what we're mixing up should not go through the tube? And he goes, well, it's true. You know, what you're mixing up has not been tested to go through that tube for feeding. And I said, yes, and what I've just read out to you from this lady is none of our products should be going through a tube of that sort. So I turned around.
Sorry, what night was this? What day before?
This was on Friday night, Friday the 28th of February 2020.
So they wanted your granddaughter to suffer for 4 whole days before they even wanted to see her.
Yes, and that is exactly what happened, because I said to them, well, if you're not going to let her come in, then we're going to bring her down to A&E. The response was, if you bring her to A&E, we will tell them to refuse to see her.
G'day, ladies and gentlemen. We're here with Brent. Where did it start first for you? What was your first steps? And
okay, so the first interaction was
bit of a background.
Yeah, so the first interaction with them was like when it came to dealing with our case. The first interaction came when it came from medical staff, DHB. Okay, the unfortunate thing is that when it comes to doctors, what they tend to seem to do is when they can't figure out what's going on with a patient, rather than try and work with a family, if what they put in place is not working, to them it seems to be, okay, no, this is what I studied, it should work. Never mind the fact that it's not working. And so we were put in the predicament, or our whānau was put in the predicament of the doctor decided, okay, if the things don't go to plan in the next week, that they would make a report of concern.
Sure.
However, when a doctor at a DHB or any member of DHB is going to make a report of concern and tell you that in a week's time if things are not working out, that should be where it stands in a week's time, not like back in November the 4th, November the 6th, 2019. To say a week's time would make it the 11th or the 18th of November, not October the 16th, a month before. You know, so when you find these sort of things out from Official Information Act files, and you're trying to figure out what's the best way to go, and you've got medical professionals that are stating to agencies like OT that this whānau will not follow medical plans and stuff like that, it makes it very hard when they've already turned around and put you guilty a month before. You know, and so it becomes a case of what do you do? So basically, the storyline goes
sort of putting the cart before the horse, really, aren't they?
Exactly, yeah. And I think the hard thing for them to accept was because one of their medical people came straight out and told us, I don't know what to do at the moment. You know, when you've got that sort of answer, and so you try and figure out, okay, what do we do in this week that they're saying they can't do anything, and you put something together that starts to work, and all of a sudden you start seeing progress. It doesn't look good when Western ideology medicine hasn't worked for the 6 months prior, and basically you've come up with a concoction, a homemade concoction that started to work. And so it's like, well...
And this is because the granddaughter wasn't orally eating, is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. Well, what they said was she wasn't orally eating. Okay. That was incorrect. We told them that she does orally take a small amount, but she nibbles. And the hard part, like I tried to get them to do back then was, okay, could you reduce down the intake to allow, like any human being, if you've got too much liquid going into you, you will never have the room to take the oral food. Sure. Doesn't matter how much you try. Yeah. And so I tried to explain to them that what we had done was basically we had reversed what they had said to do. So rather than, okay, to give a time frame for a child to eat really is ridiculous. Okay, the children, children are just going to eat at their own speed.
Yeah.
And so to say to say to a parent, well, give them 10 to 15 minutes. I mean, even at school, they don't eat in that time. They're too busy playing. But, even for a young child, they're not going to eat in that time frame. Okay, they're going to eat how they want to eat. And so to turn around and state it to someone.
They want to play with their food before.
That's right. They want to get used to it. Yeah, they're getting used to the texture and everything like that, as they're growing. So basically, that was what it came down to, was a case of found something that worked. She had our grandchild had been eating, okay, orally. Everybody was stating, no, she shouldn't be doing this. She shouldn't be doing this. Okay, it needs to be get the weight up, the weight and the health up first before doing so. Okay, but how do you do that when they claimed that the concoction we came up with, yes, it was putting on the weight, but it wasn't nutritionally complete. However, when they wanted to put her onto a certain formula, that wasn't nutritionally complete. So we just couldn't see the difference, besides the fact that we had her gain 2.4 kilos in 3 months. Okay, and when you take that opposed to the fact that the hospital was 200 grams in 6 months.
Wow.
Okay, there's a big difference.
Yeah, so what you were doing?
And so,
what you were doing?
Well, yeah, we actually had we actually had a picture taken. Like the hospital DHBs, they have people that calibrate the scales, and so I turn around and I rang the place that does them and said to them, "Is there any possibility we could just bring it down to be able to see what she comes up on your guys' scales?" Because that particular morning she had come up at 9.5 kgs on the scales that came here.
Yeah.
The problem was we went out to our doctors after that, which is just local, put her on the digital scales they got, 10.1. So we're like 600 gram difference. How?
Well, I would
we turn around.
I would think, Brent, the best plan is to stick to the same set of scales every damn time. That way, you're getting an accurate reading from the same scale.
Yeah, and that's the case. But the problem we seem to have found was, and we put this to them as well. Okay. We went to our doctors, 10.1, went to another medical centre close by, 10.1, went to the place that calibrates the Wellington DHB and Lower Hutt DHB scales. They calibrated one while we waited just to make sure it was perfect, 10.7. But then the guy did say to us, you've got to take into account 300 to 400 grams worth of clothing. So about 10.3 to 10.4, which we thought, okay, that's fine. But that still makes the scales that came to our house to weigh it 800 to 900 grams out.
Okay.
So it was like, okay, we're talking nearly a kilo. So the argument I put across to them was, how do you know you're treating for the right thing when you're out by 800 to 900 grams?
Fair enough.
You're treating her for one weight, and she's actually another. So how does that work out? And the bad part really for the whole thing is this: she's never ever, and they're still today, no diagnosis. Okay, they don't know what it is.
Yeah.
They literally do not know what it is. Okay, the last meeting we had, I think it was early February, still no diagnosis. Okay, it could be a multitude of things.
This is why
I put the question.
This is why they practice medicine. They don't perfect it. It's all guesswork, and it's why a different doctor will give a different diagnosis.
Yeah, but when you've got 4 different doctors that are giving the same answer, then what's up with that? As I said, I've said all along, not a medical professional myself, okay, but just really tried to use common sense to try and solve the problem, because all we could see was we weren't getting anywhere with Western ideology medicine. Okay, and when you've got a child that they want to put through an operation because of it, okay, and because the doctors didn't bother telling the surgeon that the child had eaten orally in the past. And then we had a meeting beginning of July last year, and I brought that up. all of a sudden that became a problem in regards to the surgery, because the surgery they wanted to do was to close the top of the stomach off. Okay, and in doing so, most of the time it's irreversible. Okay, you might be lucky to be able to get it undone, or the other thing that can happen is it's done by 3 staples around the top of the stomach. What we were saying was, but there's no need for that because she's eaten orally. As soon as I said that, the man who was going to perform the surgery looked at the doctor and said, hey, you didn't tell me this child has eaten orally in the past.
Exactly.
And so that sort of like, the room sort of went quiet a little bit. And he turned around and said, we don't do these operations on children that have eaten orally. It doesn't matter whether it's a little bit. What he was basically getting at to us was, unless the child's had no food orally, that's when we perform them.
Right.
So it was a case of, okay, so where do we go from here? So he ended up doing an endoscopy 4 days later. Okay, the social worker and the doctor were adamant, no, she's got to have the surgery. Okay, and he confirmed 4 days later after the endoscopy with a report, this child was not in need of that at all. She did not have what they were claiming she had. And I turned around at that meeting and asked him to please consider changing her to soy-based formula, because when we had her on a cow's milk with our concoction, okay, she still threw up a little bit. My partner suggested changing the milk to soy. Throwing up went away altogether. No throwing up at all.
I actually.
They finally decided.
Just on a side note there, I actually had a very similar thing with our daughter. She wouldn't take the normal formula. We ended up having to buy the goat's milk formula, and that's the only thing she would take. Every kid's different.
Now, the strange part about this has been that when I asked about having her changed over to the soy milk, soy-based formula, okay, they turned around and 3 days later they changed her to it, and they said, unfortunately, because in the meeting, the doctor said to me, not the surgeon, but the doctor, he said to me, but if this doesn't work within a week, you're not going to accept our answer, are you, that it hasn't worked? I said, no, and there's a reason why I'm not going to accept that, and that is because I know I could take her home and I could feed her up because we've already done it. And I said to him, you see, the problem is you keep wanting to go on the test, because as long as you're here, I'm talking the proven side. I'm not talking the let's test and see how it goes here. And as I said to him, I've never said to you guys, our whānau has never said, don't do it the way you're doing. What we're saying is, this is what we found worked. Is there anything in Western ideology medicine, because you won't pay attention to us, is there anything in Western ideology medicine that can do the same thing? Okay, bearing in mind that while they were trying all of these milk formulas, okay, which were all Nutricia products, I had been talking to one of the head nutritionists at Nutricia, okay, and when we had the meeting on the time that they uplifted her on the 30th of March, okay, I bring up the fact that the head nutritionist wrote me out an email to read out to him. So I read this out to him, and I turned around and says, now, don't you find it strange that here you are saying that what we're mixing up should not go through the tube? And he goes, well, it's true. What you're mixing up has not been tested to go through that tube for feeding. And I said, yes, and what I've just read out to you from this lady is none of our products should be going through a tube of that sort. So you're telling us, you're saying that, yes, the whole time. Yes, the whole time. Okay, we ended up.
You think they would check that if they go?
Oh no! You see, the difference was, okay, it states on the Nutricia site, if the doctor is willing to take the responsibility on himself, then that is fine, okay. But it also states on the Starship side that if a whānau is wanting to feed a homemade blend, they must be made aware of the risks, and if they are quite happy to go with those risks, then it is fine. But no, they wouldn't accept that. Why? I can only put it down to the fact it wasn't a medical professional that said it was okay. But yet today, okay, she is still on a little bit of those feeds through tube. Okay, our homemade concoction, I call it a shake. Okay, was we were told did not meet the nutritional requirements. However, this is the strange part. We were told by the doctor that let us use the shake for a little while. And we have this confirmed in writing, okay, that over the 2019-2020 Christmas period, the doctor she had then quoted himself, this child has made good catch-up gains on the homemade shake. Okay. They got us in January. He said, okay, would you give us the recipe for the shake? I said, not a problem. Okay. I even said to him, if it's missing anything, tell us, we'll add it in. Okay. They told us it needed a multivitamin because it was not nutritionally complete. We got my daughter bought a $60 multivitamin she had to buy. That went in all the time. Gains got better and better. But all of a sudden, the doctor realized I've got the backing of the Oranga Tamariki social worker. Okay. And then things changed. It was, no, we've got to go to this. No, we've got to go to that. Okay. When they decided to make this change, they turn around, they put her on a product called Peptamin Junior. Okay. Now it has roughly 9.7 grams of iron in it. Okay. None of the females on the female side of our family can handle iron. Okay. My daughter had an iron infusion when she was pregnant. Okay. Because the hospital recommended it. 24 hours later, emergency C-section. Okay. Because the iron had got into baby and nearly killed her as well. Okay. Way too much iron. My argument with them was about the Peptamin Junior. There was 9.7 grams in the milk powder of iron. They were adding in 3 milligrams of ferritin. Okay. Then they had another product that was going into it, which brought it up by another 2.1 grams. Okay. So in that one lot of and we had to mix it in a litre. Okay. Which is what we were doing. The problem was, if you look up iron, 14.8 milligrams a day is what a 14-year-old needs, not a 28-month-old.
Wow.
So what happened was, when we got that, which was on the 28th of February in 2020, okay, we got that new feeding plan. What happened was, all of a sudden, early evening that evening, baby screaming in pain, throwing herself around like that little girl on the Exorcist movie. Okay, and we're trying to figure out what's going on here. Okay, and all she kept on saying, bum, 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 bum. Okay, so
wanted no doubt constipation and want to have a shit because of all the iron. She couldn't.
She ended up, what ended up happening was the hospital said, okay, you need to get laxatives, and they gave her a prescription to go down to the chemist and get it. So she got that, did absolutely nothing. Okay, so the only other thing they could suggest was get a suppository. So we did that, got the suppository and put it. Luckily, it was a liquid one and not a solid one. Okay, we called the social worker, told her what was going on, literally begged her not to make us carry on this plan, and she could hear us screaming in the background. No, I'm sorry, you must follow the plan. Okay, so I said to my daughter, ring the hospital, tell them we need to bring her in urgently. Something's very wrong when she's had a lactose at the top end and a suppository at the bottom end, and she still can't go. Okay, so she rang the hospital. Sorry, you have an appointment on Tuesday. Bring her in then. We can't accept her before that. Okay. So I turned around.
Sorry, what night was this? What day?
This was on Friday night, Friday the 28th of February 2020.
So okay. They wanted your granddaughter to suffer for 4 solid days before they even wanted to see her.
Yes, and that is exactly what happened, because I said to them, well, if you're not going to let her come in, then we're going to bring her down to A&E. The response was, if you bring her to A&E, we will tell them to refuse to see her.
Are you kidding me?
That's, they would not let her come in.
They can't refuse medical treatment to someone that's in pain.
Yep, and so we said, fine, we'll go to the after hours. Apparently, they were going to contact them and let them know not to deal with it.
So they're cutting off all your lifelines before you even get to go. I wouldn't bother telling them where I'm going. I'd just go.